do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
G'day, folks. How are you? Sorry about last night. Ran a bit longer than originally intended, so I thought I'd get out of bed early and give you a bit of a hi. Good to see you, Mac. Out of bed early too, Paula. Dan, g'day, Gay. Got a few pulling in. Toxic. Sorry to be so early this morning. It's not really early. I've actually been up for a couple of hours, but I thought it was a bit rude to go doing things at 6 o'clock this morning and if you wanted to be a part of the live. So I just want to touch on a few things. It won't be a terribly long one. Right now, I have a few things I've got to get off and do today, but I do want to make up for last night because there were some interesting stories that popped out yesterday that you probably are across or you've probably seen, particularly a story regarding Pascal when he appeared on Kerry Cassidy's Project Camelot show. Now, that interview came out about 24 hours ago, I want to say, a little over 24 hours ago. If you haven't seen it yet, I haven't got the link in the description here, but I will post it after the show. We'll get onto that shortly. There is something else that we should be really thinking about and potentially gearing up for that's happening sooner rather than later. In fact, June the 9th is the day this particular event is going to happen. Now, I don't give advice, but I'm going to tell you what I would do if I had any money at all to go and do this. I would be going to buy silver today and any time today till the 9th. Why the 9th? Well, the 9th is the day that the deal that holds the US dollar as the petrodollar comes to an end with Saudi Arabia. The contract to make the petrodollar, the US dollar, essentially the world trading dollar, comes to an end on the 9th. Why? Well, it's because Saudi Arabia are changing the way people can pay for oil. And not people, but countries. That'll be somebody ringing me and the phone's too far away to reach, so you're going to have to put up with that. The issue with Saudi Arabia is that they now, along with the UAE, now want the world to pay for their oil using gold, the gold standard, as opposed to whatever they're paying for at the moment, which is US dollars. They pay for whatever oil they buy in US dollars. That deal comes to an end on June the 9th and isn't being put back in, isn't being rejuvenated, isn't being reinvigorated. In fact, it's being turfed. So what do you think that's going to do to the US dollar? Well, I would expect another jump in precious metal prices. And I'm no analyst, but that's what I would expect. So just between us, I would flip over and buy a little bit of silver. Let me just see what the price of it is today. Right now, the spot price is back down to $43.36. So that's down $4 from what it was a bit over a week ago. I would expect that to push back up again pretty quick. And the spot price of gold is at $34.99 or $3,499.33. I would expect both of those to jump in the coming days. So I would try and get some of that into your hot little hands if you possibly can. The petrodollar is dead. So the US dollar as a way of trading internationally is dead come June the 9th. I'm sure the Americans will try and keep it going, but they can't prop it up. They've got nothing to prop it up with. So I think we're going to see a bit of a change. And it will go back to a gold base, which I don't think is a terribly bad thing, just between you, me, and the gatepost. Now, why is this such an interesting thing on a number of levels? Well, this has been going on for some time. This dates back to at least some of its origins date back to the 2008 global financial crisis, where America got into a low-doc loan problem issue, and many people lost their houses. Many people lost money. America's debt was huge, beyond huge, enormous, something they could not trade their way out of. What happened? China bought all that debt. Now, a few years later, when the economy had turned a little bit and the Americans decided that they wanted to release the noose around their necks a little bit, that debt noose that China was holding, and that is how China managed to get so many great inroads into the US, because they held that debt over the US's head. The US knew that they were being corralled, if you like, that way. And the only way to stop that corralling and to regain some control of their own futures was to repay the debt that China had paid, to take control of the debt. Oh, thanks, Paul. I just saw your thing. So yeah, so they've taken control. So what happens then if you were to remove that? Well, no, let's take it a step back. So America has to repay China for its debt. How does it repay China for its debt? Well, it goes to its gold reserves, because gold is the only thing China will accept to pay the debt. They will not accept US dollars. They will only accept something with real value. So they said, we will accept gold. So America said, righto, we'll crack open Fort Knox and we will pay you. Now, whether that was one payment or a number of payments spread over a period of time, I'm not completely sure. But certainly one of the larger payments was aboard Malaysian flight MH370. You might remember that MH370 disappeared. Still never been found. No idea where the hell it went. They have some belief that it disappeared somewhere off the west coast of Australia, between Australia and the southern coast of Africa. And for a number of years, 4+ years, the Chinese, along with the Australians and the Americans and anybody else who had some kind of salvage ship, parked themselves off Western Australia and searched the seabed of the Indian Ocean, the southern Indian Ocean, practically all the way to Antarctica and all the way to Africa and back, looking for the remains of MH370 on the floor of the ocean somewhere. Ask yourself, given your knowledge of the Chinese and how well they look after their people now, ask yourself why the Chinese government would send the 4 largest recovery and underwater tracking vessels that they own, People's Liberation Army salvage vessels, for the want of a better term, sent to Australia, parked at Fremantle, or based out of Fremantle, I should say, for over 4 years, and they come back sporadically for another look. All the fuel paid for by Australians. Why? Because it's inside our search area. That's how that worked. Now, the Chinese bought 4 of their largest ships, stayed for 4 years plus, and didn't find a thing. Can you explain to me why you think the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, would order its 4 largest salvage ships to go and find the wreckage of an aircraft that had 200+ Chinese nationals on it? Do you really think they cared about recovering the bodies? They don't care about recovering the bodies on their own land. Why would they care about recovering 200+ bodies out of an aircraft crash? Oh, yes, it would be great for the families, I agree. But that's not why they were doing it. They were doing it because there was something of great value on that aircraft. you wouldn't stick around for 4 years trying to find it, 4 years plus trying to find it. What they're doing is searching absolutely everywhere to make sure that it isn't down there anywhere, and it's not. In my opinion, MH370 was hijacked and flown to Diego Garcia, where it was unloaded and the gold sent back to America. Now that leads to another story. Why would America try and rob the Chinese like that? Well, what if the gold that America went to Fort Knox to pull out and put on the flight to pay China for all the debt wasn't in fact entirely all American gold? What if America didn't have that much gold, but Fort Knox and a couple of other places in America store large amounts of gold on behalf of other governments? Lots of other governments. Now, France, Germany, and a few others had quite large gold deposits in the American gold depositories. America, it is my opinion, borrowed some of that gold to bring the appropriate amount of tonnage, because that's what it was, tonnage. There was over 20 tons of gold on that aircraft. 20 tons of gold. So America couldn't let that gold get to China, because at some point the countries that they had borrowed the gold from would want it back. They might want to turn up at Fort Knox and just look at it and discover that their cage is empty. So it became paramount that that gold never got to China, but the Americans looked like they'd paid China back. So to all intents and purposes, America put over 20 tons of gold on this aircraft flown from America into Kuala Lumpur, I think it was. And then from Kuala Lumpur, it was a direct flight to Beijing, except it didn't go to Beijing. It never made it. So I believe that that aircraft, along with a few other things, is in an underground hangar at Diego Garcia. None of the people on board will have been allowed to live. They will have been killed early in the flight in the ways that have been suggested by the weird pilot who supposedly crashed somewhere into the Southern Ocean. There is nothing like that happened. Nothing like that. And we can go on and have conversations about bits of wreckage that have washed up supposedly and all that kind of crap. We can go into that if you really want. Now's not the time. It's a very interesting form of investigation, aircraft crashes, and to find flaperons and things like that completely undamaged, washing up on little deserted islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean doesn't really work. So yeah, there is a lot of questions about that. And MH370 plays a significant role in that. And I believe that the Yanks have said, righto, well, to China, they've said, well, we paid you the gold. It was all on that plane. You had people on that plane. We paid you the gold. It's unfortunate that the plane went down, but that's your thing. If you want to go and find the gold, it's on the plane. Go and find the plane. You'll find the gold. That's exactly what China did. They came to Australia, based themselves here for 4 years, and pinged the bottom of the Pacific Ocean like they were playing ping pong, and found nothing. Absolutely nothing. So it was a huge heist, in my opinion, a huge heist that cost the lives of everybody on board that aircraft, just so America could rob from other countries, fake China into a debt deal. And of course, the debt had already been given back in return for the gold. The handover of the debt and the gold had already occurred in America before the gold left the country. So all the paperwork was signed and dotted. It was China's gold from the moment it was on that flight and headed back to Beijing, out of America into Kuala Lumpur and then to Beijing. Except it never got there. So that, to me, is a a bit of an interest in what is going on here now around the gold-backed, I should say the oil or gold-backed sovereign. I'll get it straight. It's too early in the morning for me. The gold backing of oil sales now around the world is going to prove to be pretty interesting. So, yeah, that's the deal, I believe, with what happened with MH370. I've always believed that. In fact, I remember the day that it disappeared very clearly. It was a very strange day. I was driving a limousine, as I was in those days. And in that limo, I had 3 different GPS systems, and all of them didn't work that day. There was something really weird going on with GPS systems that day. Now, why would on the east coast of Australia, GPS systems be affected by something to do with aircraft or whatever disappearing in other parts of the world? I have no idea. But I can tell you that 100% that day, there was not a GPS that was working in a fleet of over 60 limousines. And then the other guys that weren't part of our company. So it was the weirdest thing that day. Very, very, very strange indeed. But nobody's ever really put 2 and 3 together. But if you start screwing around with GPS satellites and tracking and all that sort of stuff, then it makes it pretty easy for aeroplanes and that sort of stuff to sort of go missing, if you know what I mean. Not so flash. All right, let's get on to Pascal. Pascal Nardi has popped up on the scene. He's been on the scene now for a few months. But apparently on May 9th, he had something of a download and now believes that he is in Space Force, all sorts of different things. I'll be honest, I'm watching Pascal and his interviews with various different people around the world, and I'm seeing a man who has just had the penny drop on what's going on in the world. Now, you, me, others, our penny dropped years ago in some cases, many, many years ago in some cases. For you lot, not so much for me. But if the penny drops, no, I won't say that. I'm going to get myself in trouble. Anyway, Pascal has, I believe, had a download of information that you and I have been aware of for a long time. He has also had a little bit extra thrown into him, particularly around Adolf Hitler and what happened in World War II. And he is excited that he now knows the truth. Do you remember what we felt like when we first had the penny drop in us? You know, it was frightening. It was unbelievable. It was exciting, and we wanted to share that information. And how many of your friends and family looked at you like you were a complete lunatic, saying some of the things that you probably said, like Pascal has done? So that's the first point I'd like to make on Pascal. I think Pascal is new to a lot of this information, and he is very excited by it and wants to share it far and wide and has a platform to do it. So God love him, let him do it. However, there are a few interesting little points about it that I think maybe are worth touching on. I watched the interview with Kerry Cassidy and Project Camelot with a lot of interest. I don't think that Pascal's command of the English language is as good as yours or mine. It's not his first language, put it that way. I don't think he understands Americanisms, the same as he would probably struggle with an Australian sense of humour. Australian and American sense of humour, British sense of humour, very different to a European style sense of humour. They think very differently, and they think more in literal terms. And I've been educated around that by certain people in this movement, particularly a number of our international brethren shall I call them, who educate me on an almost daily basis, that sometimes when we short-circuit our language and shortcut our language, we make it very difficult for others to understand. And I think Pascal in part suffered from that. I also think Kerry Cassidy suffered a great deal in that interview. Her lack of knowledge surrounding many things I found quite surprising. Her level of arrogance and ego involved in the interview I found really surprising. It seems that there is a level of understanding that Pascal has that Kerry doesn't quite understand, and there is a level of involvement and understanding that Kerry has that Pascal doesn't understand or was missed in that interview. I think it became quite combative, and people have gone, oh, look, she's getting up him, rather than looking at actually what was being said and what he was trying to get across. I don't believe that Pascal is imparting any new information to us. He's just imparting the information, if you've dug down enough rabbit holes, you already know. And he's excited to share it in his, Swiss, French, German way. Kerry, on the other hand, I thought was lacking in her understanding in key areas of what's going on. If you watch that interview, Kerry Cassidy, Project Camelot, if you watch that interview, you will find that they get into a conversation about Hitler, Second World War, the murdering of the Jews, yada, 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 yada. Now, Pascal brings up some very interesting points. And when speaking about the Jewish nation as such, he makes some pretty broad and threatening statements to people of the Jewish persuasion. However, I believe what he was trying to get across, and which Kerry Cassidy clearly does not understand in any way, shape, or form, that there are two books in Judaism. There is the Torah, which is a good book, and then there is the Talmud. And the Talmud is not a good book. Not for anybody who is Goyim, like us. Goyim, cattle. That is how we are referred to by followers of the Talmud. And there are a lot of followers of the Talmud. The Talmud is a Satan-worshipping document, a Satan-worshipping Bible. Kerry Cassidy doesn't seem to understand the difference between the Torah and the Talmud. And while, as a Christian, turning the other cheek is something that is profit forward, I agree. What is the benefit of keeping Satan worshippers amongst us? Because they are dedicated to everything we are not. They're dedicated to the absolute opposite. So when Pascal talks about killing the Jewish people off, and I think it may have been lost in the translation a little bit with him, I don't think he's referring to all Jewish people, but I do believe he is referring to every Talmud follower. So, and that would be something I would support. I think there has to be a trial. There has to be demonstrations of, your involvement in such evilness. But I don't think you're going to find too many people who follow the Torah needing to front a trial on that regard. But the Talmud is a whole different ballgame. And if you don't know the difference between the Torah and the Talmud, then please do. The secret is contained in the Torah. In the Talmud. And if you have a listen, and I've played it here many times, the good rabbi who tells you exactly what the Talmud preaches and exactly how those following it are following it to the letter. That is why we are seeing child sacrifices under synagogues, amongst other things. So, yes. Have I heard of the Patriot Pacification Program, Mikhail? No, I haven't. That might be something worth looking into, although I do see the patriot pacification going down in Australia at the moment. Free speech looking to be curtailed again. And of course, we have these leading bunch of assholes who claim to be leading our country to a better future, now signing us up to the World Health Organization's pandemic treaty, in spite of all the nation's feelings about it. And didn't I warn you when I said last week, and I see some troll has got on there and made a comment, I did warn you last week that when they said, oh, you know, we've escaped this pandemic treaty, it's all good. I said, just watch, that's the left hand, watch what the right hand is doing. And sure enough, the right hand came up, jammed it right up us, and we're in for digital passports. Do you know what they call it in America? They're not referring to it as digital ID. They've renamed it real passport. Have you got your real ID? That's what they've called it. Digital ID is called real ID in America. Oh, have you got your real ID? Oh, you're going to need your real ID, and you're going to need your real ID to fly domestically in America from next year. Now, there is a little get out of jail free card there, in that if you don't have a digital ID, you will be allowed to use your passport to fly domestically. What if you don't have a passport? Well, you're going to need to get a real ID then, aren't you? If you want to fly domestically. And rest assured, a year later, it will be you'll need a digital ID to fly internationally. You'll need your real ID. And then you won't need a passport at all. You will be a global citizen, able to travel anywhere, provided you get scanned through the right computer. Is that the way you want to live your life in the future? Tracked, monitored, anywhere on the face of the planet, flat or round, doesn't matter. So I would say it's going to be interesting. Yes, Sean, you're right. Pascal was talking about Zionists, not the Jewish nation. 100% right. I'm very surprised Kerry Cassidy doesn't seem to understand the difference. I have followed a little bit of Project Camelot over the years, but I wouldn't be holding that up as a great conversation at this juncture. I'm quite surprised at the lack of knowledge. Kerry Cassidy, a lady who claims to have worked with the White Hats, but then also seems to admit in the same interview that her working with the White Hats might be the same as Pascal working with the White Hats, in that he's volunteered to do that. He's put himself up as a White Hat rather than the White Hats coming to him and saying, you're anointed, come and work for us. His Space Force membership is his own. He has essentially volunteered to work for Space Force. Space Force haven't asked him or even accepted him as such, not in an open way. But how much open communication do you see from Space Force just between you, me, and the gatepost? I don't think I've seen any. So Pascal believes quite solidly that he is working for and on behalf of the White Hats, just like we all kind of do, don't we? We are the White Hats. Now, Pascal might believe that there are, arrayed forces behind us and pushing it, and he may well have deeper information on it than the rest of us. But to this juncture, in my mind at least, he's only given us information that we've known for years, if you've been down enough rabbit holes. And if it does sound shocking to you in some ways, what he's saying, then you need to be down a few more rabbit holes, because there isn't too much shocking in what he's saying unless you haven't done any research. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting time. June the 9th, watch out for that, because that petrodollar is coming to an end on June the 9th. I would be, if I had any money, and I don't, because yesterday, don't even know if I'm still up for talking about yesterday yet. yesterday, for a man who has no money in the bank, it was a bad day. I was heading off to Brisbane to go and pick up some stuff, and blew a rear tire, and really blew it, like it went pop. I was quite surprised as I was driving. So needed to change the tire. That wasn't such a problem. Needed to get a new spare. And thankfully I was close to my mum's place when all this happened. So she knew of someone who had helped her out with tires not far from her. We went around there. Not one tire, I needed 3. And boy, did I need them. I haven't got the pictures here, but there's nothing left of these tires. And I posted one up on my Facebook page. I said, over 80,000 Ks for freedom and a few trips to the shops. And there's nothing left of that tire. And the other rear was the same way. So yesterday was a particularly painful day in a lot of ways. So not too chuffed about yesterday at all. It's put a huge hole in plans that we had to be places. And yeah, it's just created a real issue. So yesterday wasn't a good day. But by comparison to others, my day was pretty good. Another dear friend of ours, you might recall I had some white hats that I was selling for a friend who was going through a breast cancer issue. We sold quite a lot of those hats and still have a few left. And unfortunately, the treatments that she was having for the breast cancer back when we were selling hats, while very expensive, didn't do much by the sounds of it. She has now gone through more traditional type therapies, including radiation and well, all the bits and pieces, chemo. There has been some good news out of that. She's still not out of the woods yet, but there has been some good news out of that. And I got a text from her yesterday too while I'm dealing with my car issues. I've got a text from her that she needs about $1,800 worth of work done on her car to make it legal again. Where she lives, you've got to put the car over the pits every 12 months. And apparently 4 new tires for her and a whole heap of other things. So I do have some of these white hats still left. I think I've got about 50 of them, 50 to 75 of them. So if you would like to help her out, then please email me and I'll send you a bank account detail that you can just drop the money in, and we'll go to help her. I think we were doing the hats at about $25 each from memory. So if you'd like 1, 2, or 3, I've got a mixture of ones that say Q, white hat, and the number 17. I've got differing numbers in each lot of those. So if you're not too fussy about which kind of number or word you have on your hat, then if you want one, please email me and I will post them today. I've got post bags and everything here, so you can have them. And that money will go to help her get her car. And she's got 2 young boys to look after and get to school and all that sort of thing. And of course, she's still working through all of this treatment that she's getting as well, because she has no other option. It's so when I say I've had a bad day yesterday, I feel pretty shitty for saying that, because my day was an outstanding day compared to hers, and many of you, I'm sure. So I don't want to say I've had a bad day, because my bad days are not bad, not by comparison to many of yours. But I know we're a good family, and I know that we can help when we can. So if we can help her out with this little bit, I mean, I'm not going to sell 50 hats for $25 and pay off her car, obviously, or get her car fixed. But every little bit will help, and that's about all I've got today to help. So if you can help, let me know. Carl@vofhq.com. I'll send you back a bank account that you can deposit money into, and she will get it. Be that simple for that. All right, folks, I do have one of those days today where I've got a lot of ugly things I've got to do myself. We will talk a little later this evening, but I'm going to be fairly knackered by the end of the day, and I'll probably be in a bad mood. It's one of those things today. We're going to have a day. I'm not looking forward to it at all. Anyway, thanks for popping up early this morning. Hello to Beck Freedom, who I saw pop up in the chat early. Beck, I'm going to give you a call today. We need to have a chat. And that might be in the next hour or so, just between you, me, and the Gatepost. I hope if you are free, you are. If you're not, you're not. That's an interesting thing to find out. I heard something similar yesterday about that myself, Sunflower, that in Japan they would prefer you pay cash, not card. That must be very difficult, I would say, for the tourism industry over there. It would be... well, I suppose no. Cards are only have been around for the last 30-odd years or so. Cash would have always needed to change hands, so it shouldn't be too difficult, you wouldn't have thought. Sunflower, Kerry Cassidy, so harsh in her questioning. Yes, she does come across as Gina Hardface bitch, doesn't she? And arrogant. A level of assumed knowledge, I think, is probably the way that I would describe Kerry. And I'm not looking to bring her down or whatever. It's just not my style. And I think she's trying to be, a hard-hitting journalistic type. But I can tell you from experience, it's never good to start an interview with much less knowledge on the subject that your interviewee is going to be talking about than your interviewee has. It's okay to start with some less knowledge, but when alternative or things that confront your knowledge base are presented to you, like they were to Kerry, her immediate reaction was to dismiss or attack them. That's not what happens with most rabbit hole divers. We tend to sit back, take in what you've said, and then go and try and prove it or disprove it, as the case says. Now, Kerry just comes across, I believe, as someone who's had a little bit of access. She's spoken to Juan. I've spoken to Juan. Juan and I have text conversations. We've tried a couple of times to try and get it together to do a recorded conversation. For one reason or other, it doesn't happen. I find that rather interesting and intriguing because I have sat up all night waiting for him to turn up for an interview, and it never happens. But I understand too, 107 might be a very busy man and doing what he's doing. Do I know what Juan's doing? Certainly don't. That's one of those times where having less idea about what your interviewee is going to talk about can be interesting to work with. Because usually when that happens, the interviewee has a lot more information and they have a line that they want to push. They have a particular story or a particular feeling that they want to leave you with. And that's why they tend to do all the talking and the interviewer tends to sit back and nod their head a great deal. Juan strikes me as one of those types, and that's fine. He does have an awful lot of information to impart, and most of it I find very, very interesting. One day we will get it together and he'll be on the show, or he won't. I'm not going to cut my throat over getting Americans on here to talk. They have a platform. It's called Ricardo Bosi. Ricardo Bosi has been preparing the Americans for his arrival now for 2 years or more, ever since he stopped talking to the alt Australian media. Right, all of us. He shunned us all, abused us all, called us all whatever, gave us names, and then used intimidation to try and stop others who might have been working with these people from working with these people, if you ever wanted to have anything to do with him again. Well, I don't know whether or not he's getting on a jet plane with his spiritual advisors and heading overseas, but I can guarantee you this. He has spent the last 2 years priming the American audience, right? And particularly the evangelical audience. Now, God bless America. God bless the evangelicals, but they'll give you $5 for saying hello to them, and they'll give you $10 a word for every word you spend after that, that you say after that to them. If they believe in you, and he's got all the bells and whistles to be believed in, you know, a light bird colonel from the SAS Special Forces. You say Special Forces in America and people just go, oh, wow. If you drill down into his Special Forces service, you might not be so, oh, wow. But he has been priming that audience for 2 years, sowing the crop, so to speak, and just waiting for the invitation or the opportunity to go over there and do some public speaking events. Well, that's where the money's going to come rolling in. He will reap what he has sown by going to America and rolling around with the patriots that he's been cultivating for the last 2 years. I'm saddened that my American counterparts do not understand this. I'm saddened that they have been bluffed by him into believing the bullshit that has been spread by him and others. And I'm saddened that our American colleagues are not smart enough, not interested enough, not enough to push for the truth. They are enamored with this Australian light bird colonel, who incidentally pushes himself as the next leader of Australia on those American shows. Now, there was a time where I would have supported Ricardo Bosi as the next leader of this country 100%. It was a short time because leaders have to communicate. Leaders have to listen. Leaders have to be flexible. And I didn't see any of that in the Bosi style of leadership. What I did see was, you will do it my way or you will be thrown out. You will be cast out. You will be tarred as a Freemason or some other kind of secret society flunky, and you will not have a future with A1. Well, now that he's thrown most of the people out of A1 Australia who really were so committed to him that they would have laid their lives down in most cases for him, but because of the way he has treated those people, not just one or two, every one of them, there is no respect left. There is no love left. There is only loss. Loss that Ricardo Bosi is responsible for. He has taken the Australian people, those of us that followed him, for quite the journey. We all make mistakes in our journeys, 100%. Most of us try to rectify those mistakes. I don't think that's the case with Ricardo. I think Ricardo is going to run from this country because there is more coming. There is a lot more coming. I think Ricardo is going to run from this country so he doesn't have to be here when this news breaks. And he's going to run right into the arms of the evangelicals in America and collect all the cash that he's been priming them to give him for the last 2 years. That's what I think is going to happen. He identified America as the largest profitable market very early on. And this is part of the reason why you have never seen me doing American shows, because you get yourself into trouble. It's not that I wouldn't talk to the Americans. It's just that the ones that I would talk to were, I guess, influenced by Ricardo, never to have anything to do with me if they wanted to have anything to do with him. And of course, Americans being Americans, they love that, oh, ex-military, special forces, oh, wow. And a little fat radio announcer out of Australia doesn't count. And that's cool. My nose isn't out of joint out of it. But you need to understand what's going on behind the scenes. This is how the bloke plays the game. And now, of course, the bloke that he had told Australia and the world, the only man he trusted, his best mate, brothers from another mother, is now a Freemason, apparently. Dave Graham, the only bloke that Ricardo Bosi trusted, all of a sudden doesn't trust anymore because Dave had the audacity to write him an email with 3 questions in it and requesting an answer to those 3 questions. So if you have any reach into the Americans, I don't know if you watch them or if you have a relationship with any of the American presenters that Ricardo might be on, let them know. Let them know what Australia thinks, because at the moment he has the Americans convinced that Australians will drop to their knees and sing praises in his name for being named the new leader of Australia going forward. And I think if that were to happen, I can't begin to think of how upset the Australian public would be. And those that would be the most upset would be the people who followed him, supported him, would have laid down their lives for him until he turned into an arsehole, showed his true colours, his true form, his true dictatorial style. This is a man who's grown up in the military. He's grown up taking and then giving orders. He doesn't give explanations or excuses. He says something, he expects you to follow it. That's the chain of command. And he's come up through the chain of command where he learned, speak when you're spoken to, and don't stick your head up too high. This guy is a military politician. He's not a war fighter. He's a military politician. And he's played the Australian people. And right now he's playing the American people. And he's playing the American people for cash. Guaranteed. I wonder if he gets that cash, whether or not he's going to pay any of the bills back here that he owes. I wonder. He talks about a moral society. He talks about character. Well, let's see some of that character. I think that would be ideal. Let's see some of that character from Ricardo. Once again, I say, I don't know if he's for sure leaving the country or who he'd be leaving the country with, but I know exactly where he'll be going. And if he does go there, there will be a lot of money flowing. Good on you, Pete. 17-year-old skeptical son just quoted the Costco bullion sales and then asked, how are we looking? We're looking good. Looking good. Looking good. Okay, Gay. Gun show earlier this year, one of the vendors, I talked about Bosi, said I think you're 100% on the money there. I've been suspecting that for some years. In fact, that was part of the reason why I wanted to get close, because I had my suspicions the whole time. So I fought to get close. And once I did get close and got to see behind the curtain, well, Ricardo didn't want anything more to do with me after that, did he? What did I see? Russ, you seem to be counting my lies today. What lies? I don't know. Oh, Russ, you're a troll of immense proportions. Why don't you go and stick your head up your own ass and find another channel to watch, Russ? Nobody cares. We're not spreading lies about anything. If I'm going to talk about something, rest assured, my friend, I have looked into it very deeply. Probably deeper than you, because your head is so far up your own ass, your eyes are closed. Stuck together with your own shit. Pull your head out of your ass, mate. Stop being a troll. You're a waste of time. And nobody cares about trolls. Yes. So there is a bit of a movement in the background, Suze, to try and keep him off the American shows. And that's nothing to do with me. I don't have any contact with any of them. But there is a concerted effort now to try and wake the Americans up to what they are welcoming, to what they are believing is our saviour. Whereas if they took a note from any other Australian alt media provider, they would discover that the Australian people are not behind Bosi, and that should he be named by the White Hats who he has no formal affiliation with either, and we just point that out. The White Hats that he gets his information from passed away, apparently, and the information comes by form of channeling from Rhiannon, I've heard. I don't know. I haven't been there to see that, but there are those who have, and they are happy to talk. Yeah, Stephen, I think, has been on to Bosi for a long time. I think there's been a lot of people on to Bosi for a long time. The problem is you've attacked a military target front on. Right? Those people have attacked a military target front on and committed suicide against it, essentially, or have had very, very, very little impact. Very, very, very little impact. But now the rot from inside is out. The people who've been treated so poorly from the inside are starting to speak. And there are a lot of them. And a lot of stories that will shock you. Being a fan of Ricardo, as we all were. Shit, if I'm honest, I still am at some point. But is he a leader? No. Not a leader I could follow or support. A leader needs to be able to communicate without abusing people. And I don't think that Rick's able to do that. So, from what I've seen, from the discussions I've had with many behind the scenes, from many in his inner circle, there's no support left. So now, America is all he's got. Now, if he somehow manages to convince a somehow existent white hat organisation that he is the next Australian leader, God help us. Because they'll come throw him down here and say, oh, look, here's this great bloke you all love. Instead, he's going to find himself answering a lot of very hard questions. So, yeah. It's just so disappointing. Pardon me, on so many levels, so disappointing. However, that which doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Isn't that how it goes? That's certainly how I feel about it. I'm going to let you go and get into your day, folks. I've done nearly an hour. I'm sorry I can't do too much on the chat tonight. Well, now, but I will have a bit of a chat about this tonight if you want. I've got to shoot off. I've got to be somewhere and spend my day. So I will be back a little later on tonight. Hopefully at 6:30 should be the case. I'll be bloody tired when I do that. Be safe on the roads out there today, folks, if you are out there. Avoid the dickheads and enjoy the sun if you've got a little bit of it in your part of the world. It looks like a nice day here, except for the harp clouds. I'll take a few photos and show you tonight what they're all about. Have yourself a good day, folks. Love you all.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!